I always tell people my last 5 years at the company, I worked doing this and I sold over $150 million worth of ladders. And I never had to ask for one purchase order, because what happened was safety took it to purchasing and said, we're getting these. Here's the bottom line. Look at what these are saving. It was the easiest sell we ever made. And we still have that business to this day. We took over the entire market.
This is the Alden Report.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by Wicked Happy. The way you live your life depends on your outlook, and theirs is simple. Be Wicked Happy. Wicked Happy provides you with apparel to make you smile. So if you want to be wicked happy and you want to look wicked cool, then visit wickedhappy.com, and at checkout, enter in the code RADIO for an additional 15% off your entire order. Again, visit wickedhappy.com, apparel to make you smile.
This is the Alden Report.
All right. Well, my name is Mike Alden. We are here in Blue Vase Studios. And as always, I say I'm super excited. Got a little bit of a different setup. I actually moved my microphone, which is cool. So now I feel like I can actually talk to people. I should have done that probably 7 years ago. I'm rocking no gel. I got no gel, the Wicked Happy sweatshirt, no glasses, but none of that matters because this isn't about me. I'm super excited for my next guest. My next guest, his name is Doug Wing. Now, listen. If you've ever watched television, there's two things that I can probably guarantee you. One, you've 100% seen me. Doug and I didn't even talk about this. Yeah, but we'll talk about it a little bit. Or two, you've seen his product that he was the co-founder of, and that product is the Little Giant Ladder. I own one. I don't know how many millions of people across the United States own one, but it was one of the greatest infomercial products in the history of direct response. I'm super excited to have him because this is kind of my world. This is where I grew up. But his experience with sales, marketing, manufacturing, and everything in between, and his stories are just remarkable. So if you want to learn about what it's like to build a business from the ground up to the point where you almost pretty much lose everything to having massive success, then you're not going to want to miss this episode. Please help me welcome Doug Wing. Doug, thanks so much for being my guest.
Hey, Mike, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. We've been looking forward to this for a while. Yeah, thank you.
Man, I'm super excited. You know, we were talking before we went live. We met on this amazing app called Clubhouse. It's one of the things that I've been screaming about from the rooftops with everybody. It's such an amazing tool. It's such a great connection tool. I heard you speak and you were featured, and man, your story's amazing. Like I said, before again we went live, we kind of run in the same circles. Let's just start with let's fast forward a little bit to how did the Little Giant become a thing? Like, whose idea was that? I know you're the co-founder. I believe it's a family run business. Tell us a little bit about that process. Like who comes up with this idea?
Well, that's a great question, because when this was in the 70s, we were living in Germany, and me and my siblings, so 7 kids, my mom and dad. My dad was selling life insurance. He was working for an insurance company, but my dad spoke German and English, so he went and opened an office up in the Stuttgart area. And the partner of his that was also there doing insurance saw the first version, a crude version of the original Little Giant Ladder, which was, Germany, they're amazing engineers. He saw this ladder. He talked to my dad about it. He said, you got to see this ladder. And my dad's like, we're selling insurance. I'm not interested. And anyway, this guy kept bugging my dad about it. And pretty soon my dad went and saw it, and he kind of thought, wow, I think I could do something with this product. And so he went home to my mom and said, I want to quit my job and I want to sell ladders. And she's like, what do you know about selling ladders? And he goes, nothing, but I think this is a business I think I can do, and I can work with my sons. And so my dad quits his insurance business, which he was one of the highest producers in the company. And he takes a sample. We move back to Utah. My dad takes it around, shows it to all his family, friends, and pre-sells a container full of these ladders. And then when the container comes, my dad goes around to everybody that said, yes, I'll take one. And everybody bailed on him. They're like, oh, my son's going to college. I'm going through divorce. My daughter's getting married. We can't do it now. And so my dad had to go out literally door to door bang on doors and start showing people this ladder and sell the whole container again. So that's how the company started.
All right. Just in that very brief introduction, there's so much to dissect there. I wrote notes kind of feverishly. First thing, geez, I thought, like most people, I thought that it was like an overnight success. You just put the thing on TV and all of a sudden you guys start making hundreds of millions of dollars. Isn't that how it works? Right?
Well, no, in fact, this year is the 50th anniversary of Little Giant. A lot of people think, wow, they see the infomercial and they thought, oh, it's a fairly new company. But what happened was my dad had to go out, and after he, sold the ladders again, the second time, the container, he figured out, okay, I learned, he made a presentation and he figured out that if he would show the people toe to toe, that it worked. And he came up with a presentation, sales closes, answers to objections. And then he thought, okay, I'm doing this business to business. I'm doing it house to house. I'll go to like trade shows, fairs, home and garden shows. And so they started doing that. And just then, because there were more people, they thought, okay, we can get more sales. And so that's how it happened. That's how the whole thing worked. And then, but in the very beginning, I kid you not, my father was gone when I was in junior high and high school. He was gone over 300 days a year. He was sleeping in his station wagon with ladders on foam pads and eating out of an ice box, and only staying in a hotel probably about every third or fourth night because he couldn't afford it. He was in gas station restrooms, brushing his teeth, shaving every morning. Can you imagine doing this?
When I heard that, you heard you tell that story a little, well, some of it on Clubhouse, and it's, I don't want to say it's a common story because it's not very common, but you hear the fantasy of that, like, I hate to bring him up, but, in The Pursuit of Happiness, Will Smith and just, and him selling those machines and with his son in a bathroom in the subway and, just fixing stuff so that he could sell it. But I think that it's a universal law of success that you have to almost be on the brink of failure or suffer and be in pain in order to be successful, right? Like, it just seems that that's always the way it is. Like, I've never heard anybody say, oh, I just came up with this idea, and before you know it, it does happen here and there. Before you know it, I was just an overnight success. Your father, and we'll talk a lot about also what you've done and what our family members done. Your father literally put it on the line, right? He he had a successful career in the insurance business, quit that. How many? You're one of how many?
What, children?
Yeah.
7. We had 7 children. Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I thought.
My parents were, what happened was my parents were only 25, 26 years old. My uncle died, and they were going to take my uncle. He was single at that time, and they were going to take my cousins in Nevada, and they were going to take him into foster care and put him into adoption. And my dad's like, we can't do this. These are, this is my brother. So my mom and dad adopted my cousins. And when they were 26, they had 7 kids. Unbelievable.
What an amazing beginning, and what a huge risk as well that he took. So this whole thing started in 1970, saw it in Germany, comes over here. And by the way, that story of, oh, I'll take one. You hear it all the time. Like, it happens to me. It happens to a lot of sales guys all the time, right? Like, I have people, I help authors with books, right? You and I talked about this, and sometimes we work on compilation books, and people say, oh yeah, I'm in. I'm 100% in. And then when it's time to write the check, everybody backs out.
Yeah.
So,
and that's one thing my dad said. He goes, I learned a valuable lesson. Get the money up front.
That's what I was going to ask. Right. Yeah. So that is a pretty valuable lesson. Get the money up front, because everybody loves it until it's time to write the check. And again, I'm sure there's been multiple iterations, like we were a part of Roger Teeter's organization back in the day, and with the Teeter hang up. And I remember the different variations of that and the kind of the crude beginnings of that product. And he's had, massive success with that as well. Obviously, the Little Giant is different now than it was in 1970. I want to talk a little bit about that as well. But before, I want to back up. So your dad gets a container full of this stuff. Now, what year was that? Because you said it was started in 1970. You remember what year that was?
Yeah, it was 1972 is when we, started that. And I was 10 years old. My brother was 12. Yeah.
So did your dad bring you like door to door with him?
Well, At the very beginning, what I did and what my brother did was we started out just like cleaning the shop, cleaning restrooms, and then slowly worked into manufacturing, and eventually worked into customer service, sales, marketing, and then over time took over the company. So it was, my dad was really, really smart. He, unlike today where, I think kids are kind of this entitlement, we live in this entitlement society, and we did all of the dirty work, and we learned, and I learned two things from that. First of all, as I went through the whole company, and I figured out, what every job did, and it gave me a better understanding of how the company ran. And it also gave me an appreciation for everyone there, those that worked really hard building the products year in and year out. Some of the employees there have worked there for 20, 25, 30 years. And so it gave you appreciation. And then when you went out to show the product, you knew how they were built, and you could explain it to people why we did this weld here and did that rivet there. And so, it was really, my dad was really, really smart, and he made us earn it. I mean, there was no entitlement with him. And my brother, actually, a couple of my brothers got fired a few times, and they came back and they learned from it. But my dad wasn't afraid to fire anybody, including his family.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I've done that as well with some family members. It's hard to, when you have a big family and you see it a lot, nepotism can destroy businesses. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you already have a built-in, army, so to speak, of 7, right? I mean, why not, have them, be a part of the business. All right. So in a minute, I want to talk about, what happens next. So in the early 70s, your dad's going door to door, building the business. I want to talk about maybe kind of like what was maybe the next kind of big moment for the business, or at least, kind of the one that really, kind of put you guys on the map, so to speak. Again, we're on with Doug Wing. Doug is one of the co-founders of the Little Giant Ladder Company. He's also the author of the book Giant Success. If you'd like some more information about Doug, he's got some kind of cool going on, which is kind of not easy to do. And I've, written a bunch of books myself. He's, if you're interested, he'll actually hand signed his book. So you can go to dougwing.com. You can also go to giantsuccess.com. The book is available everywhere. And it's a great, great story. But there are many parts of the story that I think any entrepreneur can benefit from. And that's a lot about what we're going to talk about today. I'm not going to give you all the secrets, but we're going to talk a lot about kind of the growth and the beginnings, of the Little Giant. Because as I said earlier, this was not an overnight success. Everybody thinks it was because all of a sudden they're on TV with, with one of the top infomercials in the history of infomercials. And, people think, oh, they just all of a sudden made it. That's not true. You heard him talk about how his father was sleeping in his car with 7 kids, growing out that business. So again, if you'd like some more information about Doug, go to dougwing.com. You can also check him out on Instagram at @RealDougWing as well. So, all right. So we start in 1970, starts in Germany. Your dad's selling stuff door to door. You and your family members, your brothers and your siblings are part of the business doing the basics. And I love that, what you said there. Talk a little bit about the importance of that, because that's how I've learned business as well, and how I continue to conduct business, meaning I'll take out the trash if I need to. I'll literally clean the toilets if I have to. I'll jump on the phones if I have to, customer service, sales, whatever. Not because I'm like, want to just prove to the world that I can do it, but because sometimes it's just necessary. Talk about that non-sexy part of business that is so important to grow and learn a business.
Yeah, there were times when I was a teenager where, I probably worked there. I figured out over probably about 12 or 13 years, summers, in manufacturing, when during my summers when most of my friends were off playing and doing other things. And I'm so grateful for my father for, number one, teaching us how to work hard. And my dad grew up on a farm, and he was just a hard worker, but it really did. There's something to say about hard work and knowing how to work. And today I think that's a little bit lacking in some of the young people. But yeah, it wasn't, we were in this dump of a place in American Fork, Utah. Our first place was, actually we had rats and bats in this building. And we had, the air conditioning was terrible. It was hot. It was just this
rats
building.
And bats, not just rats. I've heard of rats.
Yeah, no, we had bats in there, but big spiders and stuff. It was really a dumpy place. And so, Little Giant started off in real humble beginnings. And but we did our best. We learned how to work hard. And like I said, I was so grateful to learn, all of the different functions of the company, because as I got older and, my brother was the chairman, eventually I was the vice chairman of the company, and we were majority shareholders. We knew everything about the company, and we knew how it worked and operated. And that really did help us. But we had a great dad who was just an awesome mentor, who had this killer attitude, hard work, the hardest working guy, the most positive guy I've ever met to be around. And there were times, as we'll probably talk about, there were probably 2 or 3 times where the company was almost bankrupt and where everybody was freaking out. And there was one guy named Hal Wing that was always just cool as a cucumber, and he never showed fear, and I never saw him scared. And he's like, people would come to him and say, man, Hal, we're really struggling right now. Should I go and get another job? And he'd say, well, if you want to, go ahead, but we're going to make it. We've always made it. And we did. Somehow we always made it. And he just had an incredible self-belief and work ethic. And I was grateful to be around this guy who was just super positive, and he had this, just incredible drive as well. I mean, he didn't take no for an answer. So it was incredible.
It's interesting, what you talk about where, and I do want to talk about those moments, and if you can go back and reflect on what that felt like. But I know you're a man of faith. Your family's, your whole business is really kind of faith-based driven, which is important. But I do believe, and hopefully with this won't be an issue, but I do believe that a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of relying on hope too much, right? Your dad was an optimistic guy, and as you said, you never saw the fear within him. But his faith is important, but it was more than that, right? Because you can have a lot of faith, but you still have to do stuff, right? I think too many people think, oh, well, God's going to save me, or the universe is going to save me just because I should be saved. But I don't believe that. I'm hoping that you have something to say about that, and I'm hoping it doesn't contradict with your beliefs. But talk a little bit about that, what I call unrealistic optimism. I think that a lot of entrepreneurs have, and the balance between faith, hope, optimism, and realistic expectations.
No, that's a great question, because, my dad he had these in the back of that book. It has all these quotes that he would say. And one of his quotes was, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And so, yeah, he of course he had a tremendous, faith and hope and all that stuff and belief in a higher power. But he knew that, if he didn't get out and make it happen, right, the gifts, the talents that he was given, he had to use those things. And there's some times where you just have to, you figure it out on your own, right? I mean, we aren't just given everything. And so, he was his work ethic was incredible, and he never gave up. And it was, he always used to say, life is like a marathon. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so, that's really the story of Little Giant. I mean, it was long, it was hard. I can think of 2 or 3 instances when we were almost out of business, when the bank was about ready to, call the notes and the line of credit and all that stuff. And, we made it through it. And one of those was, this is kind of jumping ahead, but one of those was, we did the infomercial because it was like that, or we were out of business. And it was a huge risk. But before that, there were other things that happened. And
let's get into that stuff, because a lot of people love to see the result. A lot of people love to see the cars. And I know you collect, exotic cars and things like that. Like, a lot of people love to see that stuff. Like, oh man, this guy's got all this stuff, and he's just it just happened. And he never experienced any pain, but talk about those moments. I'd love to hear the first time, and then the others as well, because it's just this is what happens in business, and nobody really talks about it. So let's talk about that stuff. So the first time, things aren't going well.
Yeah, the first time that we were struggling was in what happened was, it really wasn't a struggle. It was as a result. I'll just explain what happened. Is in 1980, my father, this company in California that was a huge conglomerate, a big company that owned all these other companies, came and said, we want to buy your company. And So my dad did receive some cash. He decided to go ahead and sell the business at that time. And he had stock in this company that was based in San Jose, California. And there were a bunch of people like Rick Barry, the former pro basketball player, all these pro athletes that had invested in this company, and come to find out that it was a big Ponzi scheme. And so by the time 1986 rolled around, all of the companies that this big company owned collapsed, because what happened is they'd buy all these companies and they'd suck all the cash out of them. And so everything, and a bunch of these pro athletes, Rick Barry lost millions of dollars in this, and my dad lost everything. The company went out of business. And like I said, he did have a little bit of money that he received from the sale, but it wasn't much. So in 1986, Little Giant was no more. It was out of business. And this is really a cool story, because my dad, he found out that there was going to be a sheriff's sale. They were going to have an auction, a sale on the assets of the company. My dad kind of did the numbers. Okay, this is what I think it's going to be. I want to go to the sheriff's sale, but I don't have any money. So my dad walks into a bank in Springville, Utah, and he makes an appointment with the president of the bank. And he said, I need $1 million. I have no collateral. I really have nothing to back this up. If you'll give me the money, I promise to pay you back all of it. Will you give me the money? The president of the bank, the CEO, stands up and says, Hal, I believe in you. We believe in you. You've always kept your word. And on a handshake, he shakes his hand and says, we'll give you the $1 million. My dad signed no papers at that time. He said, the bank president just looked at him and said, we'll work everything out later, but you've got the money.
What year was this?
This was in 1986. So my dad gets...
Now, hold on. Let me back up for a second. So that doesn't just happen just because your dad was a nice guy and walked into the bank.
Yeah.
Your dad obviously had a relationship with the bank, correct?
Exactly. Yes.
And talk about the importance of that relationship and what I call, and will be my 7th book, is called Connection Capital. Talk about the relationship and the importance of that relationship. And if he hadn't have maintained that relationship, it would have never have happened. Do you know that the genesis of it or anything like that?
Yeah, my dad was super good at building relationships, and he would always say, one of his quotes is, if it's not a good deal for everybody around the table, it's not a good deal. In other words, we would go into meetings with vendors, distributors, even when he was working with the bank and stuff, he said, if I get the lion's share of the business, it's not a good deal. If you get the lion's share of the business, it's not a good deal either. But he had such good relationships with people, and people trusted him because he kept his word. And, try to walk into a bank today and say, hey, I have no money, but give me $1 million. They'll take you out with a security guard, right? But again, yes, you're exactly right. It was because they trusted him. They knew him. They knew he was a man of integrity and honesty, and they believed in him, and they gave him the money. So that is crucial. And that's one thing that he was so good at. My dad was so good at building relationships. And I'll tell you, as this story goes on, my dad goes to the sheriff's sale. He writes a check. He buys the assets back to the company. He's able to get a building, and we're able to start going again. Now, what was really interesting is I asked my dad about this one time. I'll tell you this little story. I said, Dad, man, you rolled the dice again, and weren't you scared that second time? And he goes, no, it was easier. And I go, how is it easier? And he goes, because I remembered all of the mistakes I made the first time, and I quickly eliminated those, and the money and the success and the company grew again. So it was incredible. He learned from his mistakes. But what was really neat too is my dad was so smart. He went back to all of the vendors that he had done business with. He explained the situation, and he said, look, this is no fault of my own. I've started the company again. I bought back the assets, not the liabilities. But if you guys will give me credit, in other words, the aluminum supplier, the plastics guys, all this stuff, he went back to every one of them and said, if you guys will give me credit, I promise you over time, I will pay you back all of the liabilities from the other company. And every vendor except one said, yes, Mr. Wing, we will do business with you. And he paid back all of the money that he was owed with the other company over time. Now that story right there tells me that my dad had integrity, because he didn't have to do that. And then he went back and figured out all of the customers that never got their ladder. And he called them all up. Customer service called them up and said, we will send you a ladder. It's a different company. We don't have to do this, but we will do that. And so you think about what kind of a man my dad was, of integrity, and he paid all that money back. He sent all those ladders out to people that he didn't have to. And so I learned a really valuable lesson just about integrity, honesty, and he was just incredible that way. And so again, he said, I eliminated my mistakes the second time, and it went so much faster.
Wow, that is an awesome story. In a second, I want to talk to you about, some of the other difficult things that, that your business went through, that your family went through. And again, how you kind of overcame those challenges in just a moment. Again, folks, we've been on with Doug Wing. Doug is one of the co-founders of the Little Giant Ladder. Again, if you've ever watched television, if you've ever been into a hardware store, you've most likely have seen the Little Giant Ladder. He's also the author of the Giant Success book. If you'd like some more information about Doug, you can go to giantsuccess.com. You can also go to dougwing.com. You can check him out on Instagram at Real Doug Wing. Listen, if you want to learn about what it's like to build a business from the ground up, if you want to know what it's like to be in business, if you want to know what it's like to be on the brink of failure and how to come out through that failure and how to really make it in life and in business, then this is the type of information that you need to get. Again, go to dougwing.com, or you can go to giantsuccess.com. If you go to giantsuccess.com, Doug will actually hand sign the book for you. Again, the book is available everywhere. It's called Giant Success. But you know what? It is a giant success, and it's been a giant success. But as you've heard already, it didn't just happen overnight. Too many people believe that it just happened, that people's successes just happen. It didn't just happen. It was years and years and years of mistakes, of what Zig Ziglar calls temporary defeats, and how to overcome those temporary defeats. Why? Because he believed in the product that they were selling, and the product itself is just a great product. So again, if you'd like some more information, go to giantsuccess.com, or again, dougwing.com. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Wicked Happy. The way you live your life depends on your outlook, and theirs is simple. Be wicked happy. Wicked Happy provides you with apparel to make you smile. So if you want to be wicked happy and you want to look wicked cool, then visit wickedhappy.com, and at checkout, enter in the code RADIO for an additional 15% off your entire order. Again, visit wickedhappy.com, apparel to make you smile. Man, that story was just remarkable, and I think it really puts a giant exclamation point on the value of relationships, not only with your vendors and your quote partners. I hate when people use that word partners, because most people really aren't partners. Oh, we want to be your partner, until it's time to actually write the check, right? But I also think what your father did with the customers just builds just amazing value, and goodwill with the business. So let's jump ahead to the direct response side of things. What made you and the company decide to do an infomercial? Whose decision was that? And talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, so that was another point in where the company was in trouble, was how the infomercial came about. So we're building ladders again under, a new company, and we're selling to trade shows, at fairs. We actually, from the Germans, redesigned the product. We had a licensing thing with them for a while, and then we redesigned the product and got our own patents. My dad did. And so we're going along, and things are going well. We're selling at trade shows, fairs, home and garden shows. We now have distributors. We even have big distributors like Grainger and some of these big industrial supply places. We're out of the box stores pretty much at this time. But what happens is, as we go along, we made several mistakes. One, we didn't innovate. We just kind of had the one-trick pony. Long story short, our patents were expiring. And this company out of, I think they were out of China, they knew exactly when our patents were going to expire. And so, like, 1 year from the date that the patents were going to expire, they knocked us off. And they thought, well, okay, they can just, by the time they sue us and this goes through court, the patents will be expired. So what happened was, excuse me, I just got a little frog in my throat. But what happened was, we were all sitting like in the office at Little Giant, and somebody walked in with a full page ad in the USA Today of an exact knockoff of our ladder at half the price. It looked exactly like it. Now, boy, people talk about people panicking in the company, half the price, made in China. And again, my dad didn't panic, but I was a little nervous at this time, to be honest, because I was like, man, how are we going to sell against somebody who has a similar product? And what we found out later was the quality wasn't as good as ours, but still, here we have patents running out, and then this comes out, and then all these other competitors come into the market. And our sales just drop. I mean, drop. And we got down to a very dangerous level. So we're having these big meetings in the company. And our CEO at the time, Ryan Moss, he's still the CEO of the company. It was really interesting. My brother and I, we were the owners, and my dad was the owner. We were all owners, but my dad had somebody else in as CEO, which was fine. Everybody was in the right place. But he comes up with the idea. He said, I think we should do an infomercial. Ryan Moss did. But there was only one problem. And the problem was that at that time, this was like 2003, 2004, then an infomercial was $1 million. And we didn't have the money. We did not have the money. And again, here comes Hal Wing, this ever confident man who totally believed in his product, believed in his company, believed in his people. He said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. He said, I have a farm. And what's really cool is he goes, I will mortgage the farm. And so you think about it, my dad literally bet the farm. And he said, I will go to the bank. I will get a mortgage on this farm. I'll give you the $1 million, but I want the money back in 6 months. And he goes, I'll be in the infomercial. We'll have some other celebrity talent in there. But he goes, I think it was $20 or maybe $10 or $20 for every ladder that we sell on this infomercial. So my dad goes to the bank, he bets the farm, we do the infomercial. Literally bets the farm, we do the infomercial, and the infomercial is a unbelievable success. When we first came out, we had to do a few little tweaks, but it was pretty much overnight success. And we went from producing 400 ladders a day to 7,000 ladders a day, literally in probably a month or two. And so we 4 times our sales that first year. We 4 times our sales again the second year. And all of a sudden we're in, Costco, we're in places that don't even sell ladders. I mean, this infomercial in its industry had all kinds of records. We were in linens and things, Bed Bath and Beyond. We were on QVC. We were just, we were in Home Depot, and what was really ironic, Mike, was that cheap ladder they had at half our price. People were walking into Home Depot and saying, I want a Little Giant. And they would say, we have this ladder, it's half the price. And they said, no, we want a Little Giant. So there were some people that would come into Home Depot, buy the cheaper one, but there were people that said, I want the one on TV. So Home Depot was killing it. They were selling, the cheap one and ours. And anyway, so it was just wildly successful. And once again, Hal Wing, literally bet the farm. But one of the really cool stories about the infomercial, Mike, was Hal Wing loved his people so much that once, and I'll tell you, we did a couple of good things, but the one thing that really was impressive was I'm in a management meeting with my brother, the CEO, our CFO. My dad walks in and he goes, I love my employees. They carry me to the top of the mountain every day. We couldn't have done this without them. And he looks at the CFO and he says, I want to take $1 million out of the company and I want to divide it up amongst all the employees in bonuses. And I want to give them, according to what their position is, what they do and everything. And he looks at the CFO and he goes, can we do it? And he goes, yeah, Hal, we can do it, but I wouldn't recommend it. And he goes, I don't care what you recommend. It's my company. Do we have the money? And he's like, yeah. So we went through the list. We got everybody's bonuses. And my dad personally, in this huge lunchroom that we have in the manufacturing facility, he handed out $1 million in bonuses and shook everybody's hand that day. And we, everybody came by and people were in tears and hugging and, crying. And I'm telling you, people loved my dad because he was such a good boss, and those are the types of things he did. And they were so loyal to him because he did things like that.
That's a beautiful, beautiful story. In a second, I want to talk to you a little bit about intellectual property. You had mentioned earlier China. You talked about patents a little bit. I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm a lawyer by trade, and I was general counsel of a direct response company, and so I've done a lot of work in IP. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the importance of it, maybe some of the challenges that you've had, and what that looked like for your business in just a second. Again, folks, we've been on with Doug Wing. Listen, what a story, right? If you're interested in business, if you're interested in success, if you're interested in what it's really like to run a business, what it's really like to go through challenges, how to overcome those challenges, and all the important parts of business, then check out what Doug is doing. Go to dougwing.com. His book is also called Giant Success. It's available everywhere. You can go to giantsuccess.com. You can go to dougwing.com. If you go to giantsuccess.com, he'll actually hand sign the books for you. Or if you just, if you want to go to Amazon, if you want to go to Barnes & Noble, it's also available there. You can check him out on Instagram at The Real Doug Wing as well. What a story. I'm super excited to have him. We're blessed to have him because, again, he's not, and this business was not an overnight success. You heard him talk about it. The business started in the 70s, in the early 70s in Germany. And here we are today, and he's still in business, which is a remarkable feat in and of itself. So again, if you'd like some more information about Doug, the Little Giant, and what they've done and what they continue to do, go to dougwing.com. Make sure you pick up the book, Giant Success, as well. So let's talk about intellectual property, IP. Everyone likes to talk about IP. I wrote a lot about it in my last book, Blueprint to Business. You have a product that has all sorts of different types of patents on it. But not only do you have patents, we're talking about trademarks. We're even talking about copyrights with some of the things that you've produced, including the infomercial. Talk about the importance of intellectual property. And I haven't read your book yet, but I will. But I don't know if there were ever any moments other than what you talked about earlier with this company in China knocking you guys off. I don't know if there were any moments, or if there was any litigation, or if there was any protection of your IP. But I'd like to hear about those stories, and if there are any, as it relates to your IP.
Yeah, thank you very much. But so once those guys timed it perfectly on that original, the original ladder that was on TV. But I'll tell you what, Little Giant was really, really smart. We learned from our mistakes. We were very blessed to have the infomercial, and we could have just said, oh, let's just keep running with the infomercial. But you know what? Those don't last forever. And so we were very wise as management of the company. What we decided to do was we said, let's go into these different verticals. We don't do anything in fiberglass ladders. We don't do anything, a lot in the trades, like with contractors, with electrical, with cable, all this stuff. And so what we did was we decided to innovate and take a lot of the money that we were making from the infomercial and invest it back in the company. And it was the best decision they ever made. So what happens is we went into all these different verticals and really strengthened the company. And we were able to get into Lowe's with a 5-year contract with Lowe's. We actually didn't make any fiberglass ladders. And it's really interesting how this worked, Mike, was because we decided to listen to customers' whys, right? And we decided to come up with our why as a company, and our why became preventing injuries and saving lives. And so we went into all these different new products that that were important to customers. And what, for example, we had the entire NCTA association, which is all the cable and telecoms, Comcast, sure. Which are big back where you are, and then Bright House and Charter, all these cable companies, Cox, yep, came to us. All the safety directors belonged, even though they were competitors, they belonged to this association, and they would work on problems that they all had. And one of the big problems that they had was they were using these heavy fiberglass ladders, and they were hurting their shoulders. Their technicians were blowing out their back, shoulders, arms, dropping them onto people's cars through windows. And they came to us and said, hey, could you build us a 28-foot extension ladder? We're using 100-pound ladders, and they're heavy. We're spending millions, workman's comp, surgeries, all this stuff. Can you guys come up with a ladder, 28 feet, fiberglass, that's half the weight? And I was at a show with Ryan Moss, our CEO, and Ryan tells them, we'll do it. And they walk off. And I said, Ryan, we don't even make fiberglass ladders. And he goes, we're going to learn how to do this. because, this is really important. So within 8 months, we built this ladder that was 50 pounds. And Ryan and I called the people back up. It was Jeff Spackman from Comcast and Kevin McDevitt from Charter. We called them back up. We said, we have this ladder. And they said, you got to be kidding me. Here's our meeting, our next meeting. We went there, we showed them the ladder. They're blown away. And they said, can you make like 30 samples of this ladder? We said, absolutely. So we made them, we send them out. And what happened is they would give it to one technician. He would use it for 3 or 4 days and he would fall in love with it. And then they'd want to give it to the next technician and they'd be almost in fights about it because they didn't want to give the ladder away because he was so productive and he was, healthier. And so what was really interesting is they said at first, we'll buy these all through attrition, but it saved them so many millions of dollars. They just bought them all at once. And overnight success. And here's the kicker: by listening to the customer, yes, we reduced that weight by 50%, but guess what? The ladder was twice as much money as what they were spending. And they bought millions of dollars worth of them because it was saving them millions of dollars in the work, the claims. They were coming out ahead. And so what was wonderful about this project was, I always tell people, my last 5 years at the company, I worked doing this and I sold over $150 million worth of ladders. And I never had to ask for one purchase order, because what happened was safety took it to purchasing and said, we're getting these. Here's the bottom line. Look at what these are saving. It was the easiest sell we ever made. And we still have that business to this day. We took over the entire market. So that's what happened is we innovated and spent the money on patents, right? And a lot of engineering fees. And we paid a lot with attorneys with getting all these new patents and doing all that stuff. But it came back and made the company so much stronger. And the company is in very good hands right now because of that. And so we learned from our mistake, not just have one ladder, and we branched out and we spent a lot of money, like I just mentioned, on patents and all that stuff. But it came in big time for the company. It came back in spades.
Well, again, I could probably keep you for hours. I know you're a busy guy. I want to thank you, for being here. And it's such a great story. If you want to learn more about what Doug is doing, again, you can go to dougwing.com. Make sure you pick up the book, Giant Success. There's a lot in this book. Again, I haven't read the whole thing. I did skim through it a little bit, but there's a lot of information in there. And not only, again, as I mentioned earlier, is it a great story, but there are a lot of lessons that can be learned in there. I've learned from others that some of the greatest, experiences are the experiences of others and the things that they've done, because they've done it. They've gone through the heartache. They've seen the challenges. And in his book, Giant Success, again, it's not just a great story about what they've done, but you can learn from their success as well. Again, the business has been around for 50 years, which is just a remarkable feat. And they weren't an overnight success. It didn't just happen. And it's also just a great, heartwarming story, as well as a family-run business and a faith-driven business, and the things that they've done, not only for their employees, but for the community as well. So again, if you'd like some more information about Doug, you can go to dougwing.com. You can also check him out at giantsuccess.com. If you go to dougwing.com, and you do pick up the book, he'll actually hand sign the book, which is kind of cool. Not a lot of authors will do that. Book is available everywhere. Again, it's called Giant Success. Again, Doug, it's been awesome and an amazing time for me. I'm glad that you were able to take the time and come on the Alden Report. I really appreciate you. I appreciate the story, especially as a guy that's from the direct response world as well. It's I'm sure I'm probably gonna have to have you back because I want to talk to you more, but I know you're busy. So anyway, again, like some more information, go to dougwing.com or giantsuccess.com. My name is Mike Alden. That's Doug Wing, and we'll see you soon. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Wicked Happy. The way you live your life depends on your outlook, and theirs is simple. Be Wicked Happy. Wicked Happy provides you with apparel to make you smile. So if you want to be wicked happy and you want to look wicked cool, then visit wickedhappy.com, and at checkout, enter in the code RADIO for an additional 15% off your entire order. Again, visit wickedhappy.com, apparel to make you smile.